This is Inside Shale, a feature of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association. We cover the latest news and information from the industry that is shaping West Virginia. Natural gas is reducing emissions, lowering the cost of energy, and creating jobs. And with natural gas, America is on a path toward a better energy future. Think about it. This is Inside Shale Weekly.
Welcome to Inside Shale Weekly. I'm Hoppy Kercheval. Coming up today on the show, we're going to talk with Dominion about the Cove Point project, which has been through a lot and is almost near completion. This is a project on the eastern shore of Maryland that's going to liquefy natural gas to be shipped overseas with our trading partners. We'll get to that in just a moment. Also coming up, we're going to talk about the Oil and Gas Museum in Parkersburg. There are a lot of artifacts about the history of oil and gas drilling in the Mountain State, and we'll find out more about that. Also, later in the program, although some of the employment has been reduced in the natural gas fields, we're going to talk about ways that veterans or returning soldiers can be trained or find jobs in the gas fields. And also a huge announcement by EQT about drilling. So all that coming up today on Inside Shale. We're going to start, though, with the Cove Point project and talk with Bruce McKay, Managing Director of Federal Affairs for Dominion. The Cove Point project is a liquefaction project, almost a $4 billion project. Created several thousand construction jobs there. Construction still going on. There was a lot of environmental opposition, a lot of questions as to whether or not this would be a wise investment. Well, they're almost finished. At least almost finished a part of it. And this is a significant development in the development of and the global utilization of natural gas that is produced in this country. So let's bring in Bruce McKay of Dominion. Bruce, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Hoppy. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for coming on. Well, a lot of people said you couldn't do it, and you almost got it done, at least the first part of it.
Well, it's a little ambitious to say that it's almost done, but we are under construction, progressing on time. For us, on time means we expect to be ready to make LNG to load on a tanker in late 17.
Okay.
Today I just checked this morning, we have about 1,400 people working on site. I was out there a few weeks ago. It's an impressive construction project underway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is it going to be all online at once, or will it come on in phases? Well,
this will come on, as I understand it, at one time. There's one LNG train. They call a liquefaction process set of equipment a train. We are putting one out there. Some of the bigger projects down in the Gulf might have 3 or 4 trains. So I think when it's up and running from what I understand.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, explain how this is going to work, this Cove Point project. So there's going to be a lot of natural gas that ends up at Cove Point, and then it's liquefied, then it's shipped overseas. I mean, that's a very, very oversimplification on my part. Can you give me a more detailed explanation of how it's all going to work?
Yep, I sure will. You know, what we're essentially doing is reversing the process that's been out there for a long time. You talked about the history. I'll take 30 seconds and remind people this was built as an LNG import terminal back in the late 70s.
So built as an import terminal.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
As an import terminal. Recall those days long ago when we couldn't produce enough gas for our own needs?
Right.
And then the world changed, or no, not the world, but then the U.S. changed and what we could do. So we were importing from Africa for a year or two, and the project was built by Consolidated Natural Gas in Colombia back in the 70s, or Columbia Natural Gas. So it operated for a couple of years. The markets changed. Then it sat dormant. Dominion bought it around the turn of the century and reactivated it because once again we were going to have to import. The projections at that time were that today we'd be importing maybe a third of the gas that the U.S. was going to use to run our economy. And nobody was excited at that prospect that we'd head down the same path as we did with oil. But yet it looked like that's what we needed to do if we were going to continue using natural gas. So about 2005, 2006, we'd reactivated it. I think one year we had 70 tankers coming in, a lot of it from Trinidad and Tobago. Well, then around 7 and 8, that's when hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling paired up, and we know what's happened since that time. So a few years after that, the import business pretty much went stagnant. And we and others said, well, we're sitting there with a lot of the equipment. Let's add the ability to reverse it. So instead of taking liquid and warming it up into gas and putting it into the pipeline for domestic use, we'll take gas out there, we'll take it and liquefy it, To liquefy it, you take and drop the temperature down to 260 degrees below zero. That's the point it becomes a liquid. You then load it onto a tanker, and off it goes. On the other end, they then warm it up. So at the time we decided to jump into this, we went marketing the project, and we began the permitting process. We signed up 2 long-term customers. One is Sumitomo in Japan, the other Gale of India. Each will take half for 20 years.
Wow.
So we are all fully subscribed for 20 years, take-or-pay type contracts. Sumitomo then went out and connected with Cabot Oil and Gas, so that for the next 20 years, Cabot will be charged with procuring and delivering to Cove Point certain volumes of gas that we'll take, liquefy for Sumitomo, and load it on their ship, and off it goes. Gale has done the same with WGL Services, part of the Washington Gas Company. So they will provide the gas for Gale and get it over to us. We'll liquefy it, and away it goes. So that's the process. We don't lose the ability to import. Should the market ever change, we just add the ability to export. We connect into the world market, 2 ways instead of one once this project's done.
Bruce McKay is with us, Managing Director of Federal Affairs for Dominion, talking about the Cove Point project, which is in full construction phase, should be ready by 2017. This is off the eastern shore of Maryland. So let me go back to the supply part again. Where will be the sources of the gas domestically that will go to Cove Point?
Well, that's determined by
market?
Cabot. Cabot and WGL. They're the ones that will source the gas for our customers. Okay, so I think it'll presumably come from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio. The pipe that connects to Cove Point runs over to Leesburg, Virginia, and then connects in with some other existing lines. So once you get it into the region, you can get it over to Cove Point that way. No new lines have to be built.
They don't. So the infrastructure is in place to get the gas to Cove Point.
Exactly, because it's the same pipe that we used to bring the gas in when we were importing, and now we'll just run it the other way to take it out and export it.
Bruce, what is let me talk about your customers again. So the gas you're exporting, the liquid gas, is going to be split between customers in India and Japan. Now, there's gas in other parts of the world. Can you explain how Dominion was able to market this gas to the customers and provide a better, what presumably is a better deal than other sources of liquefied natural gas around the globe? Because it is a global commodity.
It is, and I'll tell you, when we were marketing, let's look at Japan, for example. At that time, I forget the name of the disaster at the nuclear plant.
The Fukushima.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was Fukushima happened. Japan ended up shutting down all of its 50 or so nuclear reactors. They were very dependent upon nuclear power, and they were going to become only more so. Well, they've got a few up and running again, but the nation was, shocked by what happened there. They've had to make up a lot of that lost nuclear generation with gas-fired. So they went from being the already #1 importer of LNG in the world, getting it from the Middle East and other places, to having to sign up for a lot more. Well, they want, of course, a diverse supply portfolio. You don't want all your eggs in one basket. They also saw what was happening in the U.S. with the pricing that we have. They had been buying LNG based on a formula that would have them in the $16, $17, $18 per MCF range. What they've done with us and the way this works, bear with me for a moment.
Sure.
We aren't selling them the gas. We're liquefying it. So they can pay a price in the U.S., pay us to liquefy it, pay to transport it, and that's not cheap. I think
Right.
It's in the $3 range to liquefy it, get it to Asia another $3, and then gasify it another $1. So you take a U.S. price and add that on top. It still looked very advantageous. That'd get you to $10, $11 compared to $17, $18.
So actually, not to get too far down in the weeds, so Japan and India, then, they're negotiating with the gas suppliers in this country on price, and then you guys are kind of a middleman?
That's right. We're providing a service.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't buying and selling the gas. We're providing a very specialized service to take that gas and chill it and liquefy it and load it.
Will that still... again, this is a better question for Japan and the companies in Japan and India and for the suppliers, but will that market still be there if and when the price of gas rises? Right now it's at historic lows. but it inevitably, as a commodity, will rise at some point. Will that market still be there?
Well, if our prices went to $4 or $5, and now that seems a long ways away, doesn't it? And it wasn't long ago; it was $10, $12. So you'd have to take and add on to that $6 or $7 for a delivered price to those countries. Well, at $4, that's still a pretty good price compared to what they had paid in previous years.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, they would like to not be dependent upon Russia, for example. Iran wants to sell gas to India. We as a country, I think we'd rather have India buying gas from us than Iran, for those, for obvious reasons. Europe is very eager to get out from under Gazprom's supply and all the strings that come with it. And speaking of Europe, Lithuania in the last year opened up an LNG import terminal. So in 2014, Lithuania, for example, was completely dependent upon Russia and Gazprom. By next year, I believe they will buy zero gas from Russia and Gazprom and be able to buy LNG from other sources in the world, and they couldn't be happier.
Bruce McKay is with us, Managing Director of Federal Affairs for Dominion, talking about Cove Point, and that's kind of the slang for the name of the facility off the eastern shore of Maryland, which used to be an LNG import facility. Dominion bought it, and they're turning it into an import-export facility for LNG, and there have been hundreds and hundreds of construction jobs there. They've done all the permitting, and they're going to be ready to go online in 2017. Speaking of permitting, obviously there were environmental concerns and challenges. I just read a story here this morning. This was from actually June. A federal appeals court has refused to halt construction of the LNG export facility in southern Maryland while it weighs a legal challenge to the project's approval. So clearly there have been environmental objections from a variety of the usual suspects here. Where do things stand with any of those challenges? Do you know?
We've been successful on every review, every legal challenge along the way. I don't know that you'd find a more thoroughly analyzed and studied project than this one. It was thorough, transparent, open, local, federal, state permitting agencies. We worked our way through it. Yes, many objections along the way, but in every case, we met them and proved that it's a very well thought out, safe, environmentally conscious project. And as we continue through all this, that's proved again and again. And of course, we're confident that nothing will provide a hindrance going forward.
And over there's been a boatload of jobs associated with that, right? Secondary and tertiary jobs associated with the work.
Well, we have about 1,400 on site. Those are a lot of construction jobs, of course. That's just on site building it. Well, then you think of some of the local suppliers,
right,
and all in the southern Maryland. Calvert County is the county. It's been a huge boon. We think it's the largest private investment project that Maryland has had in decades. We don't know of a larger one. So the impacts are great. The property tax for Calvert County, we're going to pay an additional $40 million per year to that one county. So the county's looking forward to that revenue.
Oh my gosh, that's a big big number.
Well, and 4 miles away there's a nuclear plant. So if you live in Calvert County, you pay pretty low personal property taxes, and your services are gold-plated.
Yeah. Where are there rival, if you will, LNG export facilities in this country along East or West? Well, there wouldn't be much West Coast. I don't think there's much gas out there. But along the East Coast or the Gulf Coast, are you in competition with other export facilities, or are other companies, and I should ask them, but are other companies going in this direction?
There are 4 export projects under construction right now. So we're the only one on the East Coast. We just happen to be the only one that's a nice short pipe away from the Marcellus and the Utica and all the Gaston region. The others under construction are down in Louisiana and Texas, where you would imagine they would be. And those are all the ones under construction, I think, are all similarly import terminals that were built. A couple that never imported a cargo. They built and got finished at about the same time everything changed. And they quickly pivoted in adding export capability. The first one that will come online is a company named Cheniere in Sabine Pass, Louisiana. They are getting ready to go operational, and I think as early as January they could begin making LNG and start loading their first ship. That'll be a big one, so they'll be the first one to come. You mentioned the West Coast. There are actually 2 proposed projects for Oregon. that would source gas from Canada and also from Wyoming and Utah and Colorado that would run over there with a pipe. They have some tough sledding permitting-wise,
Right.
but there are two projects that would serve because they're closer to Asia once you're up in on the West Coast.
Bruce, I would imagine that Dominion and other companies that are doing this would not do it unless they did their due diligence and thought this was a good investment because it's such a gigantic investment, which would be based upon the thought that there is just plenty of gas that can supply for years and years to come. Just yesterday, EQT announced, I'm going to talk about this more in a few minutes, that it was going to drill 70-plus wells in 72 Marcellus wells in 2016. They drilled a gigantic Utica well in Greene County. They just completed that not long ago. So clearly, the due diligence suggests that the supply is not endless, but certainly there's a ton of it.
It's certainly abundant, and it seems every time a new estimate comes out, private or public, a government agency, the numbers just keep going up and up. And if you think what the technology has done in the last 5 years, if technology advances are anywhere near that in the coming 5, 10, 20 years, we'll get more and more out of the existing formations and find more. So how can you not be optimistic?
Bruce McKay, Managing Director of Federal Affairs for Dominion Resources on the Cove Point Project. Bruce, I appreciate the update, and thank you for coming on Inside Shale.
My pleasure, and thanks for giving me the chance to update. You all have been very interested along the way, and it's great to be talking about construction and not aspirations for construction and permitting fights. Now we're getting it done, so thank you.
You're exactly right. I appreciate the time. When we come back, I do want to talk about the EQT announcement. It kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. I did see it in some media, but we'll talk more about that after this when Inside Shale continues.
Every day, Americans commute to work, charge their phones, and do a number of things that require reliable energy. But how often do we take a moment to stop and consider where our energy comes from? One source of abundant American energy is natural gas. With natural gas, America is on a path toward a better energy future. This is Inside Shale.
EQT made a huge announcement yesterday. It was a forecast for 2016. EQT said announced the company's capital expenditure plan, a forecast of $1 billion in additional business development, including $820 million for well development. Within that, EQT says in 2016, the company plans to drill 72 Marcellus wells with an average length of 7,000 feet, all of which will be on multi-well pads to maximize efficiency and economics. The Marcellus drilling program will focus on the company's core Marcellus acreage. So that's from EQT. They're going to have a big drilling project in 2016. That comes on the heels of EQT drilling what some are saying is the biggest natural gas gusher ever in the Utica in Greene County. That went online earlier this year. The Wall Street Journal reported just a couple weeks ago, and there's a bit of economic irony here that EQT's Greene County project spewed enough gas in its first 24 hours to power every home in Pittsburgh for nearly 3 days. So this is a huge gas well in Greene County, Pennsylvania. But also, again, the economic irony is that it glutted the industry and continues to force down natural gas prices and even force down the value of EQT stock. So there is so much gas that is being discovered with the Marcellus and the Utica. Now other formations are being explored that it is continuing to keep prices depressed and even stock prices depressed because there's just so much of it that's out there. But at some point the bubble will pass through. But interesting that EQT has announced that they're going to go big for 2016 with 72 additional wells to be drilled, and they will be in the Marcellus formation, an $820 million investment by EQT. All right, when we come back, more to come on Inside Shale. We're going to talk about the Oil and Gas Museum in Parkersburg, and also we'll talk with West Virginia National Guard Adjutant General Jim Hoyer on getting veterans jobs in the oil and gas fields. This is Inside Shale Weekly.
Did you know that since 2001, MIT has run more than 75% of its operations with a natural gas cogeneration plant, producing both heat and power in the same process? As a result of this technology, MIT reports that their plant will reduce emissions by 45% when compared to their older technology. This is Inside Shale.
There is a tendency, and it would be understandable because all the attention now and all the media now, to believe that the natural gas industry is relatively new in West Virginia with the Marcellus and the Utica. Actually, it goes way, way back. The story is that the first oil well, maybe the first oil well in the country, was in West Virginia in Wirt County 155 years ago, the Rathbone oil well. All this and more can be found in the Oil and Gas Museum in West Virginia, part of the Oil, Gas, and Industrial Historical Association. Paul Hoblitzel is president, and he joins us on Inside Shale Weekly. Paul, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you, Hoppy?
I'm well, sir. Thanks for coming on. Take me through, because the Oil, Gas, and Industrial Historical Association, there's several parts to it. I want to touch on each one. Let's start with what I mentioned was the Rathbone oil well, which was active 155 years ago, and now is Burning Springs Park. Where is that, and what can people see there?
Well, Burning Springs Park is on the Little Canal River on Route 5 between Elizabeth, West Virginia, and Burning Springs. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
We have a cabin there. We have another building that's a museum. We have the Rathbone well. We have a lot of the engines and artifacts displayed in the field there between the road and the river. Several years ago, after we had a new casing put in it, we were able to have a cookout and use natural gas out of the 155-year-old well for cooking.
And the Rathbone well is
experience.
Paul, the Rathbone well, and I think there's always historical debate about this, but you all lay claim to the Rathbone well as the first oil well in the country. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. And as opposed to Pennsylvania, they were the first well drilled for oil.
Okay.
But they had been drilling for salt brine and all, and the byproduct, of course, was oil. There's also records even down around the Elk River in Charleston of oil in 1835, and also being used for mechanical purposes.
Yeah, it's interesting that originally it was the drilling for the salt brine, and the oil and gas were just getting in the way. Like, this oil and gas is really fouling us up. We really want the salt brine, but certainly things have changed a lot.
That's right.
All right, tell us about the Oil and Gas Museum that's in Parkersburg. What's there?
Well, in Oil and Gas Parkersburg, Dave McCain and I were out on the Ohio River one night in
I hope not in the 1800s.
Yeah, and he gave me this idea, and the following day we started the Oil and Gas Museum. We have the old Smith Hardware building in downtown Parkersburg.
Right.
It's 4 stories and a basement, and we have thousands of artifacts, various machines. We have a yard next to it that has various types of pumping engines in it and all. We have an old rig there, and our idea is to propagate the history of the oil and gas industry and maintain the artifacts and all for education.
It's really cool. I was looking at some of the pictures. It's really cool. I'd like to visit it sometime. What is your favorite part of it?
Oh, I think probably the favorite part is displays we have on defining and talking about the burning springs from 1859 up through about the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a pretty good display that depicts all of that. And just the artifacts, knowing what it took to do some of this work with the weight and size of some of the equipment.
Pretty amazing. Paul Hobwitzel's with us, president of the Oil, Gas, and Industrial Historical Association. Finally, Paul, there's Henderson Hall Plantation. What's Henderson Hall Plantation?
Well, Henderson Hall Plantation, the Hendersons came over to the United States, were originally in Virginia, came to Wirt County and then down to the Ohio River. And Henderson Hall was built in 1839, a small building which was a kitchen and not much more. Then by 1859, they had a four-story building there. The Hendersons were friends of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Alexander came here. They had an oil field, oil fields in the Williamstown area. They farmed. The house has 5 generations of clothes, toys, furniture, and that type of thing in it. It's really a well-preserved facility.
Yeah, it just recently passed from the Henderson family to historically preserved site, correct?
That's correct. Michael Rawson, the last family member living, he had kept it up and was having it open and all, and he willed it to the Oil and Gas Museum so we could continue it on as a museum and educate the public about the history and its association with our country.
Mm-hmm. That's very good. Paul Hobwitzel, president of the Oil, Gas, and Industrial Historical Association, talking about the aspects of that, and the 3 key elements are the Oil and Gas Museum in Parkersburg, Henderson Hall Plantation, and Burning Springs Park, all fascinating parts of West Virginia's history. Paul, it's great to speak with you. Thanks for coming on Inside Shale Weekly. We appreciate it. When we come back, what are ways to get veterans? We're always looking for ways to help our veterans, and one way might be to get them training to get jobs in the oil and gas fields. We'll talk about that when Inside Shale continues.
The country's top mines are using natural gas to cut costs, improve their carbon footprint. As the best and brightest turn to natural gas, we should all think about using more natural gas to meet our power generation demands. According to Penn State, the switch to natural gas was a big step toward cleaner and more sustainable energy sources. This is Inside Shale.
Inside Shale continues. Please welcome General Jim Hoyer, Adjutant General of the West Virginia National Guard. I should also note, former recipient of the West Virginia of the Year Award from the West Virginia Broadcasters Association. General, always good to talk to you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Hoppy. Glad to be with you.
Yes, sir. Is there a nexus here between returning servicemen and women, guards, men and women who've served overseas, and the employment opportunities in the natural gas industry in West Virginia, in your opinion?
Yeah, Hoppy, and actually we've taken a three-pronged approach to working this. One are those veterans who are coming off of active duty, and they come in 2 categories. One are those who might still have time left to serve, who we are actively recruiting to come to West Virginia and be in the Guard, and obviously they need stable civilian employment.
Right.
The other is those veterans who have reached their 20-year retirement mark and are retiring, and we think are great to attract to West Virginia with both their retirement income and the ability to work another career and create more disposable income opportunities in West Virginia. Then, we've got those 2 categories. Then our National Guardsmen, who we want to have stable employment in West Virginia. And we have right now about 50 guardsmen in the last probably 2 to 3 years who've gone into the industry with good employment opportunities. And then the third piece of this is our Mountaineer Challenge Academy cadets. And we actually ran a program for the first time during this cadet class. 24 cadets went through an oil and gas industry training program put on by Pierpont Community and Technical College.
Wow, that's great. And I know, and I say it every time it comes up, the Mountaineer Challenge Academy does a tremendous job of taking young people who just are on the verge of going the wrong way and getting them straightened out to go the right way and make them productive members of the West Virginia community. So that's great. General Jim Hoyer is with us, Adjutant General of the West Virginia National Guard. Typically, what kind of skills do members of the National Guard and or the military have that might be applicable in the gas industry?
Well, a couple of things I hear on a regular basis from employers is, our guardsmen have that strong work ethic. Our veterans have that strong work ethic, can do, get the mission done. We obviously in the military, we consistently emphasize safety. Safety is a big part of the industry as well. And obviously, if you've come from a military culture, it's about getting up, showing up to work early, being able to pass a drug test, and being a productive member of a team. And all those are things that I hear from employers on a regular basis. And our folks are physically fit and ready to do the job.
Mm-hmm. What about having a CDL, commercial driver's license?
Absolutely, Hoppy. That is another initiative that we've been working with Southern West Virginia Community and Technical College and Boone County Career Center. We developed a military driver's license to CDL accelerated program, and we've had a number of folks go through that and go out and get jobs. One of the challenges that I didn't realize that we have with that is I've got a number of young guardsmen between the ages of 18 and 21 who drive some of the most significant and the largest military vehicles in the inventory, but cannot get a CDL license.
Really?
They turn 21. So that's a challenge for us and something that we're looking at to see, what can we do about that in the future.
Yeah, is that a federal issue? Is that a state issue? Is that something that can be tweaked in the law? What can you do there? Do you know?
I believe it is a federal issue, and I've got some staff looking into it now, and we're going to look and talk with both our state legislature and our congressional delegation as to what makes sense and what's good opportunity. But clearly these young folks between 18 and 21 have shown a significant maturity level being in the military and the situations we put them in. So I think they're something that we need to explore and look at.
Yeah, if you're 19 or 20 years old and can drive a sophisticated an expensive piece of military equipment through a dangerous part of the world, I would think that would translate into being able to get a CDL in this country, don't you?
I would think so, and we're gonna look at that and see what we can do to address those things.
General Jim Hoyer's with us, Adjutant General of the West Virginia National Guard. There is one issue currently, though, and that is, frankly, employment has leveled off significantly, if not declined, in the gas fields because of the glut of natural gas, and there just isn't as much hiring. In fact, there have probably been some layoffs. So that's an issue concerning as you try to get your people jobs in the gas fields.
Yes, and I think that's something that we have to continue to balance as a state and look at. But so far, what I've heard from employers is that there are still opportunities that exist out there if you get the folks with the right skills and the right work ethic.
Mm-hmm. Is it simply up to military or retired military or guards people on their own to seek out these jobs, or do you have any sort of placement opportunities within the Guard?
No, we have a couple of initiatives that we have a great program in West Virginia that multiple agencies from multiple different levels of government called West Virginia Military Connect have come together and are doing some great things to identify employment opportunities for veterans, for guardsmen, for reservists. Honestly, Hoppy, I think it's one of the most forward thinking and progressive programs in the country, and a lot of great people in state, federal government. I've got full-time Guard personnel assigned to this as well. And we're actively going to military bases as part of our Guard recruiting, and we're bringing information and in the near future going to be taking employers to these locations to say, hey, we're not just coming to recruit you into the West Virginia National Guard. We're coming to recruit you to West Virginia and opportunities that may exist in West Virginia.
Well, I think that's really good. So this connection is not just a West Virginia connection. This is regional.
Yes, and we're able to go out, and what we do from a National Guard recruiting perspective is we identify active duty facilities where we know individuals will be coming off of active duty. We send individuals out to those locations to talk to these individuals as they transition, and we're talking not just to those that still have a service obligation time available and we get in the Guard, but those who are retiring from the military, because in my opinion, Hoppy, West Virginia is a great place for veterans to come, and if we look at the demographic situation we face as a state, we need to get more able-bodied working folks into West Virginia.
You're right.
And hopefully we can create those opportunities.
General Jim Hoyer, Adjutant General with the West Virginia National Guard. General, always great talking with you. As I've told you many, many times, your people do a tremendous job. Thanks for coming on Inside Shale.
Hoppy, thank you, and thanks for all the support that you and everybody out there gives to the National Guard.
You got it. Thank you, General. We'll take a break and be back. Inside Shale continues right after this.
Schools in the Marcellus Shale region, such as Westmoreland County Community College, Pennsylvania College of Technology, West Virginia Northern Community College, Eastern Gateway Community College in Ohio, and Broome Community College in New York, came together and formed Marcellus Shale Net, a recruitment, training, placement, and retention program for high-priority occupations in the natural gas industry. You're listening to Inside Shale.
I want to thank our guest today, Bruce McKay, Managing Director of Federal Affairs at Dominion Resources. Talked about the Cove Point project, which is moving along and by 2017 should be exporting LNG. Also, Paul Hoblitzel, the Oil and Gas Museum. Appreciate him coming on. And, of course, State Adjutant General Jim Hoyer with the West Virginia National Guard and what they're doing to find employment for our veterans and members of the Guard in the gas fields. Thanks to J.R. Falls, our producer, Deborah Martinelli, handling the video stream. I'm Hoppy Kercheval. This has been Inside Shale Weekly, a presentation of the West Virginia Oil and Natural Gas Association.